Yo, what's up guys, I'm Dunmere, I'm a rank 1 peak Supervive player, and I have almost 1,000 hours played in the game already. In this video, I'm going to give you guys a complete bishop guide, giving you an absolute rundown on what I think are the best items, power setups, and level order for the character, telling you guys what I think is the best of each option and what is bad about them. Jumping right into this, starting with the items, we're going to talk about the different builds you can play. So Bishop is actually one of the most diverse characters in the game in terms of her options. So in this, I have a meta build for what I think would be the best full tank build on the top left, the best combo build, and then the best like full damage build. So just jumping, straight into all this, Guardian's Respite I think is the best objective power on Bishop. I think she gets a bunch of free value out of it for basically, very little cost, right? She's not a mana intensive character. Obviously she might still run out of mana sometimes, and that's, something you might have to just compensate with by popping in a mana item for one of these other ones. But assuming you don't, and what I would recommend starting without and testing it. But this middle section here, for Guardian's Respite and then Turbo Booster and then Meditation, I think is the best straight on build for Bishop. You get a bunch of extra tankiness while still having a high amount of damage, and you're getting a speed boost every single time you use your dash, right, with the way the Turbo Booster works. And then you have the Meditation boots to stand still just a little bit, just to restore your mana when you, when you are starting to run a little bit low, right? But there's different, like I said, there's a bunch of different builds. They each are potentially viable. I do think, like I said, the middle one, this half build, is the most powerful overall. So if you're looking for, to play what I think is best in terms of what you need for, like how the breakpoints work and all that, I would go with the middle build for how it affects her, like her raw damage output while keeping some tankiness. But I think it's all viable because she has a lot of CC, there's a lot of stun capability, and so if you're running like this Guardian's Respite Hamlet of Gigantism build, where she's getting like a lot of tankiness, right, with a good amount of like AP from the Helmet Gigantism, giving extra AP based on how much max HP you have, you can kind of frag a lot, right, while still being pretty tanky. You can take a lot of damage while still outputting enough to justify like the enemy having to look at you still, right? However, Bishop still does have like the ability to just like single out like an individual target and just blow them up, right? So if you're running this like power user turbo booster build, you just ult from off screen, you hit someone, you'll deal a huge chunk of damage, punch them into a wall, or like shoot them with a rocket, punch them into a wall, rocket them again, and you're kind of just cooking them, right? So there's like huge value you can do in terms of that. As for like other options for items outside of this kind of thing, I put Interweaver a little bit higher than I actually would put it normally. I think I would definitely drop it down a little bit more. Maybe put Amplifier there instead. Amplifier isn't the best thing in the game. That's why I think Power User is better for Bishop, considering she doesn't really get like that much value out of Power User, because you really need to like or for Amplifier, because you really need to be cycling, like using the same ability over and over again to get a lot of value of Amplifier, getting a lot of the stacking CDR, the cooldown reduction per each use, the same ability. But you don't really get that if you don't, like on Bishop, because even if you were to do it on like the dash or something like that, you're going to be engaging with the ultimate a lot of times. If you're trying to use it on the knockback grenade, like it doesn't really deal that much damage and you're starting to run into like some mana problems, right? So it's viable maybe just for like opening with some spam, but Power Lover or Power User is probably going to be really viable for Bishop instead, because it's going to guarantee that you're always going to be able to keep a hold of certain items when you die. Once you fully upgraded it by, doing 2 vaults, you're going to be able to keep really important powers for your team, like maybe a Blink Dagger or Hover Wings for yourself, to use the Hover Wings tech where you pop it and then you do your triple dash to like get a bunch of height so you can survive for a long time. Having said that, so like, these are the base builds. If you do feel like you're running out of mana and you're struggling with that, I would first recommend on the build on the left, I would recommend dropping probably the Helm of Gigantism for a Scholar, and then I would drop the I would drop the turbo booster for a mind blade in the middle version, and then I would probably drop the probably turbo booster for a mind blade also on meditation. I think those are the solid ways to go about that. And then from there, like the other options just really aren't that good, so you shouldn't really need to mess around with them too much. All right, jumping right into the ability level up order here. I might catch a little bit of flack for how I'm going to tell you guys to do this. Some of the other bishop players, not all of them, but some of them recommend basically never leveling up the displacement charge, the ranged placement knockback thing, until you absolutely have to. So waiting until level like 8, I guess, or some people wait until level 7, I believe. I don't really think it's that bad. I think there's uses for it, but I don't recommend doing that. However, I think the rest of my build generally follows what they would recommend. The first one, you're always going to want to do you're definitely going to want to do the dash. People always kind of say that you should, not always, but they recommend if there's no enemies nearby, like going for the like a punch, for example, to just clear out the camp really quickly. But I think that creates like a risk of you accidentally pressing the wrong ability when you do actually have to fight an enemy team, when you should pick the dash for extra mobility in the fight and escapability, or just doing it and then not knowing enemies are there and then getting caught out and having to take a fight without your dash. It can get really bad, right? So I go dash, definitely go punch. Punch is her like best power after that, so, or best power in general, or like best capability. That's not the dash. So do punch, and then leveling up her dash to level 2 is super valuable. It gives you a whole extra charge of her dash, so she goes from 2 dashes to 3. It's nasty. It's way too much power in an early level to do that, and then I recommend going for the displacement charge. I think also, yeah, you know, it's just valuable. It lets you poke a little bit. There, you can use it to like lock down corners, hold it somewhere to make sure people don't go through there and knock them back when they do. Try and knock people out of cover. I think there's a lot of value out of it. But I do recommend doing it. Plus, it's an extra ability, and that's fun. So, from there, I would recommend going for the ultimate at level 5. The ultimate's super strong. You definitely want that. But then you want to try and rank up your punch again before you go for your dash level 3. The punch gets a 5-second cooldown reduction, so it goes from 12 to 7 seconds, and that's a big deal. So definitely go ahead and pop that. But after that, it's between whether you want to go for a doubling or tripling your rocket to get a big rocket on activation, so extra damage and the ability to get basically an extra partial movement cooldown every time you dash, because like using the big rocket when you're traveling backwards boosts you further. So that's really valuable. Or you can trade that for some max HP shield when you punch people. I default to going for the level 3 shift. From there, you don't really need to be leveling up the displacement charge. The displacement charge's value is the knockback on it rather than the damage. And so I would go for the 50% bonus damage on the ultimate rather than the 50% bonus damage on the knockback instead. So ult to level 8, ult level 2 at level 8, and then into leveling up your knockback level 2. So jumping into the powers, I have this tier list here that shows basically how a power should be obtained or thought of in terms of the randomness of a BR. You can't guarantee what you're going to get, so prioritize picking up items on this list and then cycle them up through the, from the bottom up to the top as you go through. So Bishop's powers are kind of all over the place. There's a lot, like, she's a very generalistic character in a lot of ways, so there's a lot of power to be gained from some of just general things that are generally good in a lot of other people. But she gets a lot of value out of things that are going to give her just disruption, give her extra sustain, better ability to brawl, invisibility items, and like there's just so many, they're all just so unique, really. So I'm just gonna like run through the different variations. In terms of powers that give her really good sustain or like disruption in fights, its ability to like stay in longer in fights against enemies. You have things like Sand Wall at the bottom and Air Blast that are going to give her a little bit of ability to just like bully people around, sustain yourself, block some cooldowns with the Sand Wall, etc. Or something like this Chonker in the bottom right, where she can actually activate it as she's dashing. Like you can dash then activate it, and so when you land, you can Chonker somebody. So she has a unique interaction with that. She gets a lot of value from these other disruption things like the bungee. Not as good as other characters, but bungee can be good. You know, in the bottom, like the fourth to the right of the yellow category, and then the middle one, which is the anti-mobility field. She can anti-mobi field on top of, like, jump into the enemies when she punches them, then drop the anti-mobi field like on top of them. And so if they try and like move around in an awkward way, like they're at risk of stunning themselves, right? So that's really interesting. And those are like some weird disruption things that she can do. She can also take these tree grenades and the tree prison, and she can punch trees at people. If you punch the trees, it travels in towards enemies, and will stun them and hit them or it'll knock them back, and if it hits a wall, it'll stun them. So that's a unique little version that she can take, right? She also has this berry eater combo of having the berry and then having the little branch here. Those two together make her have a lot of sustain. And so she's diving into enemy teams, popping that, punching people. She starts eating herself, or eating when she's going to start taking damage. She'll sustain herself a lot. It's a very valuable thing to have in the character. But she also benefits from things like invisibility, right? Like having like Brushwhacker, or an Invis Cloak, or the Delicate Disguise. So the two on the left of Strong, the left of the orange, and then the middle of the Perfect level. Those will give her the ability to sneak up on enemies, either being completely invisible with Delicate Disguise when she's at full HP, or you know, not quite as for as long, walking out of a brush for like 4 seconds with Brushwhacker, but then just setting up and then punching someone into a wall, rocketing them, punching them into the wall, and then, you know, that's basically a kill. Or just literally like hitting it, punching them into a wall, shooting them, ulting them, shooting them again. Like you can just permanent stun lock people with it. So it's really powerful. Alternatively, you have things like grappling hook, which is really good on Bishop because it enables her to get a free engage into enemies where she can just like guarantee punch them, right? That's not a bad option from her. Or delicate barrier, especially if you're running a tankier version. The shield with the axe on it, that gives her like the ability to hit people and you know, instantly just like be putting in like a bunch of damage. And especially if you're running the version of the punch that gives you a max shield, or you're running the Guardian's Respite, it stacks and it works until the Guardian's Respite's broken because you're at full HP still. So you're getting like 50% damage reduction while you have like an overshield up, right? So you could like ult into people, punch them, you're stacking up your shield, you're getting like increased like 50% damage reduction until that's broken through, and then for like 2 seconds after that. So assuming it still works like that, which I really think it does. So there's a lot of like really good value you can get with that, right? Or you have some absolute goofy stuff like the hover wings. I mentioned it earlier, but if you pop the hover wings and then you triple dash, you go up into the air, and it gives you a bunch of height, and you can use that to like drop into the middle of the enemy team and punch them into your team, or use it to escape, or to like get a most wanted off, especially if you go off of a jump pad too. Like they had to nerf it because of all the silly stuff you could do with it. Or you have the Fate Rewinder, I believe it's called, the recall ability. And you can just ult in the enemy team, punch them, do whatever, and then press that button and you're completely safe again. So these are kind of what you're looking for on Bishop. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or have anything to say, go ahead and throw them into the comments below, or come follow me on my Twitch and my YouTube when I'm streaming, and go ask them there.